My name is Jeremy Wilson, and at 68 years old, I thought I had seen it all. That sunny Tuesday morning when my son Adam visited with his wife, I was genuinely happy. His smile seemed warm as he said, "Dad, I have a surprise for you," handing me an envelope. My heart swelled with anticipation. Perhaps vacation tickets? A gift for my upcoming birthday? I opened it slowly, unfolding the papers inside. $500,000 of debt. In my name. My world collapsed in seconds. If you are watching this right now, let me know where you are viewing from. Hit that subscribe button, and stay with me as I share how my own flesh and blood betrayed me. I spent 40 years of my life as a high school English teacher, pouring my heart and soul into generations of young minds. Teaching was never about the money, but about making a difference. My wife Martha and I lived modestly in our small 3-bedroom house, raised our only son Adam, and planned for a simple retirement. Martha was the love of my life, my anchor through every storm. When cancer took her 5 years ago, something inside me died too. Adam was always our pride and joy. From the moment he was born, Martha and I doted on him, perhaps too much, looking back now. He was a bright kid, quick to learn but just as quick to expect things to go his way. As an only child, he received all our attention, all our resources. We scraped together enough for his college education, wanting him to have opportunities we never had. "A child is your heart walking outside your body," Martha used to say. How painfully true those words would become. After college, Adam worked in finance, always chasing bigger deals and a more luxurious lifestyle. When he met Diana 3 years ago, I was initially happy for him. She was stunningly beautiful, with her perfectly styled blonde hair and designer clothes. They made a picture-perfect couple on the surface. But something about Diana always felt calculated to me. Her smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. "Your father is so quaint," I once overheard her tell Adam when they thought I was out of earshot. Living in this tiny house when he could sell it and move somewhere more appropriate for his age. After they married in an extravagant ceremony that must have cost more than I made in 5 years of teaching, Adam changed. Our weekly phone calls became monthly, then merely holiday greetings. When they did visit, Diana would walk through my modest home with barely concealed disdain, commenting on the vintage furniture and charming outdated kitchen. What she called vintage was simply what Martha and I had lovingly chosen together decades ago. The years after Martha passed were the hardest of my life. Mornings stretched endlessly without her gentle presence beside me. Depression crept in like a fog, making even simple tasks feel monumental. I found some solace in my routines. Morning coffee on the porch, volunteering at the local library, Sunday dinners with my neighbor Frank and his wife. Frank and I had taught at the same school for 30 years, and he understood my grief without needing words. My retirement income was modest but sufficient. Social Security and my teacher's pension covered my basic needs. The house was paid off, thankfully, Martha and I having made the final mortgage payment just 2 years before her diagnosis. I had managed to save around $120,000 for my later years, perhaps for assisted living should I ever need it. Not a fortune by any means, but enough to give me some security. Then, about 2 months ago, something strange happened. Adam and Diana suddenly started visiting more frequently. They would bring groceries, ask about my health, even invite me to dinner at their lavish home across town. Diana would touch my arm and ask if I was managing okay on my own in this big house. At the time, I was touched by their apparent concern. I thought perhaps they had realized life was short after a mutual friend had suffered a heart attack. "Dad, you know we worry about you," Adam said during one of these visits. "Diana and I have been talking. We think you should consider moving into a nice retirement community. We could help you look." I declined politely but firmly. This house held memories of Martha in every corner. The backyard garden she had lovingly tended, the kitchen where she taught Adam to bake cookies, the living room where we had spent countless evenings reading together. I could never leave. Adam seemed unusually interested in my finances during these visits. "How are you doing money-wise, Dad? Retirement planning all squared away?" he asked casually over dinner one night. I have enough, I told him simply. Not rich by any means, but I can take care of myself. You know Diana and I are doing well, he said, gesturing around their expansive dining room. I could give you some investment advice if you want. Make that nest egg grow. I thanked him but declined. At my age, I explained, I preferred security over growth potential. The look that passed between him and Diana should have warned me, but I missed it entirely, blinded by my hope that my son was finally reconnecting with me. During their visits, I noticed Adam would sometimes disappear into different rooms of my house for a few minutes at a time. Once I found him in my home office, quickly closing a drawer when I appeared. Just looking for those old family photos you mentioned, he explained smoothly. I thought nothing of it then. Now I realize he was searching for financial documents, perhaps even practicing my signature. Their sudden attentiveness made sense in retrospect. They were softening me up, studying my routines, and gathering information. The wolf was circling, and I, the trusting sheep, had welcomed it closer. The morning they arrived with their surprise began like any other. I was watering the potted geraniums on my front porch, enjoying the warm sunshine on my face. Their black luxury SUV pulled into my driveway around 10:30, and I noticed immediately how Adam gripped the steering wheel tightly even after parking. Diana emerged from the passenger side, wearing an outfit that probably cost more than my monthly pension, her diamond earrings catching the sunlight. Good morning, Jeremy, Diana called out, always using my first name despite my gentle corrections early in their relationship. Martha would have called it disrespectful, but I had learned to let it go. Adam approached with an envelope in his hand, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Beautiful day, Dad. There was something off about his demeanor, a nervous energy I had not seen since he was a teenager coming home past curfew. Diana kept checking her designer watch and scanning the street as if expecting someone. I invited them in and offered coffee, which they accepted. As I busied myself in the kitchen, I could hear them whispering urgently in the living room. The conversation stopped abruptly when I returned with the coffee tray Martha had received as a wedding gift 45 years ago. So what brings you two by so early? I asked, settling into my armchair. Adam cleared his throat and shared a look with Diana. Actually, Dad, we have some news. A surprise for you. Oh? I felt a spark of genuine curiosity. Perhaps they were finally going to give me a grandchild, something Martha had longed for. Here, Adam said, handing me the envelope he had been holding since they arrived. It was a standard business envelope, unremarkable, except for its unusual weight. I smiled as I took it, my mind racing with possibilities. Perhaps tickets to see my favorite baseball team? Or maybe photos from their recent vacation they had mentioned. The thought that it contained anything negative never crossed my mind. As I opened the envelope and pulled out the thick stack of papers, my confusion grew. The top page had a company letterhead, Wilson Investment LLC. I had never heard of this company. What is this? I asked, beginning to scan the documents. Adam leaned forward, his voice taking on a strange, rehearsed quality. Dad, Diana and I have been building an investment company, using our expertise in finance to help people grow their wealth. Wilson Investment? I questioned, still not understanding. Yes, Diana interjected smoothly. We named it after the family. Sounds more trustworthy, you know. People like that personal touch. I continued flipping through the pages, increasingly bewildered by the legal language and large sums mentioned. Then a number caught my eye. $500,000. Next to the word outstanding. What is this? I repeated, my voice sharper now, as alarm bells began ringing in my head. Adam exchanged another look with Diana before continuing. Dad, we needed a solid foundation to start the business. Someone with established credit and assets. The realization dawned slowly. Then all at once. You used my name? Without asking me? It was going to be a surprise, Diana said, her smile tight. We were going to tell you once the investments matured, and we could show you the profits. But these papers show debt, not profit, I said, my fingers trembling slightly as I turned another page to see my signature, a signature I had never made. Adam sighed dramatically. There were some unexpected market turns. The property development in Arizona didn't go as planned. The investors pulled out after the environmental assessment. "These are my signatures," I said quietly, staring at the papers. "But I never signed these documents." The room fell silent for a long moment. Diana was the first to speak. "Jeremy, what matters now is resolving this situation. The debt has to be paid by Monday, or there will be serious consequences." "Consequences?" I echoed, still struggling to process what was happening. Adam ran his hand through his hair, a gesture reminiscent of when he was a child caught in a lie. "The investors are not patient people, Dad. They want their money back." "And how exactly am I supposed to pay $500,000? I asked, my voice rising despite my attempt to stay calm. Diana's eyes flicked to the window, then back to me. "Your house is worth at least $350,000 in this market. Your savings would cover most of the rest." The audacity of her statement left me speechless. They had not only committed fraud using my name, but had also researched exactly how much they could extract from me. "We know it's a lot to process," Adam said in what I suppose he thought was a sympathetic tone. "But we need to move quickly. Diana has already spoken with a realtor who can list the house by tomorrow." "You want me to sell my home?" I finally managed. "The home your mother and I built together? To pay for debts I never agreed to?" "Dad, be reasonable," Adam said, his voice hardening. "We wouldn't ask if there were any other way. This is serious. This is fraud," I corrected him. "You forged my signature. You created a company in my name without my knowledge." Diana's perfectly manicured nails tapped impatiently on her coffee cup. "The papers are already filed, Jeremy. Whether you knew about it initially or not doesn't matter now. Your name is on everything. Legally, you're responsible." The casual way she described this criminal act was chilling. I looked at my son, searching for any sign of the boy I had raised, the child Martha and I had loved unconditionally. "This debt must be paid by Monday," Diana repeated firmly, "or we all face very unpleasant consequences." "I am not selling my house," I stated firmly, placing the papers back in the envelope. "And I am certainly not paying for debts that were fraudulently created in my name." Adam's face darkened. "After everything Mom and I did for you, this is how you repay us? By refusing to help when we need you?" His words struck like a physical blow. How dare he invoke his mother's memory in this scheme? "Your mother would be ashamed of what you're doing right now," I said quietly, my voice trembling with emotion. "She taught you better than this." "Do not bring Mom into this," Adam snapped, his finger pointing accusingly at me. "She would have helped me. She always understood me better than you did." Diana placed her hand on his arm in a gesture that seemed designed to appear calming, but somehow felt rehearsed. "Adam, darling, let's focus on the solution. Jeremy needs to understand what's at stake here." She turned to me, her voice taking on the patient tone one might use with a difficult child. "Jeremy, I know this seems sudden, but our lifestyle requires certain commitments. We have the house in Oak Ridge Hills, the vacation property in Vail, Adam's Mercedes, my jewelry collection." She touched the enormous diamond on her finger as if to emphasize the point. "We can't simply downgrade our life because of one investment setback." "Your lifestyle?" I repeated incredulously. "You expect me to sell my home, empty my savings, and spend my final years in poverty so you can maintain your luxury cars and vacation homes?" Adam stood up abruptly, pacing the small living room. "You don't understand the pressure we're under, Dad. These aren't normal investors. These are dangerous people." "What do you mean dangerous?" I asked, a new worry creeping in. "Let's just say they don't resolve unpaid debts through the court system," Diana said cryptically. "They have their own methods. So now you're involved with criminals." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "All the more reason to go to the police right now." "The police?" Adam laughed bitterly. "And tell them what? That your signature is on dozens of legal documents creating a company you claim to know nothing about? Who do you think they'll believe? A confused old man or all this paperwork?" "I am not confused," I said, rising to my feet despite the arthritis in my knees protesting the sudden movement. "And forging signatures is a crime, no matter how many documents you've created." Diana's face hardened, dropping all pretense of warmth. If you go to the police, Adam will go to prison for fraud. Is that what you want for your only son? Of course not, I said, genuinely pained by the thought. But I cannot give you what you're asking for. What about a loan against the house? Adam suggested, his tone suddenly wheedling. You could keep living here, just take out a mortgage. At my age? On a fixed income? No bank would approve that, I said, shaking my head. And even if they did, I could never make the payments. Then sell it, Adam shouted, his composure finally breaking. Sell this old house. Move into a senior apartment. It's what you should have done years ago anyway. I stood my ground. This is my home. The home your mother and I built. The home where we raised you. I'm not selling it to cover your bad decisions. Diana's eyes narrowed. We're not leaving here without a solution, Jeremy. Either you sign the papers to sell this house, or we take other measures. What other measures? I asked, genuinely confused. Adam pulled out more papers from his jacket pocket. I have the forms ready for you to transfer the house to us. We can sell it ourselves. I stared at them in disbelief. You came prepared to take my home? Just like that? We knew you might be difficult, Diana said dismissively. You've always been stubborn about the wrong things. The wrong things? I repeated. Like not wanting to be homeless at 68 years old. Adam slammed his fist on the coffee table, causing the cups to rattle. Sign the papers, Dad. Stop being so selfish. Selfish? The irony was almost too much to bear. I gave you everything, Adam. Everything your mother and I had. We worked extra jobs to pay for your college. We supported you when you couldn't find work after graduation. We helped with the down payment on your first condo. And now it's your turn to help us, he countered. That's what family does. Family doesn't commit fraud against each other, I replied. Family doesn't forge signatures or create fake companies. Adam's face contorted with rage. He picked up his coffee cup and, in a moment I will never forget, threw the hot liquid directly at me. The coffee splashed across my chest and arm, the heat searing through my thin shirt. I cried out in pain, more from shock than actual injury, though the burn was real enough. You ungrateful old man, Adam shouted. After everything we've done, visiting you, checking on you, this is how you repay us? Diana stood up, gathering her designer purse. Get out, she yelled, as if this was her house, not mine. Get out of our way. We're done wasting time with you. I clutched my burning arm, staring at them in disbelief. This is my house. You're the ones who need to leave. We'll be back, Adam threatened, pointing his finger in my face. And next time we won't be alone. You have until Monday to change your mind. They stormed toward the door, but Adam turned back one last time. The bank foreclosure will be public record, Dad. Everyone will know you failed. Is your pride really worth that humiliation? The door slammed behind them with such force that Martha's collection of porcelain figurines rattled on the shelf. In the sudden silence, I became aware of the coffee dripping from my arm onto the carpet, the sting of the burn, and the crushing weight of betrayal. For several minutes after they left, I simply stood there, coffee soaking through my shirt, my mind reeling from what had just happened. The son I had raised, the child Martha and I had poured our hearts into, had just assaulted me and threatened me in my own home, over money, over a debt I had no part in creating. I slowly made my way to the bathroom, peeling off the wet shirt to examine the reddened skin beneath. The burn wasn't severe, thankfully, just a painful reminder of how quickly things had escalated. As I applied cold water and then some aloe vera gel Martha had always kept in the medicine cabinet, I tried to make sense of it all. How long had they been planning this? How many documents had they forged my signature on? And most painfully, had every recent visit, every show of concern, been nothing but manipulation to gather information about my finances? I returned to the living room and picked up the envelope they had left behind, spreading the papers across the coffee table. Loan agreements, incorporation documents, investment proposals, all bearing the name Wilson Investment, LLC, and all featuring my signature. A signature I had never made. What could I do? If I reported the fraud, Adam would likely face criminal charges. My own son, in prison. The thought was unbearable. But if I didn't report it, I would lose everything Martha and I had worked for. Our home, my security in old age, everything. I needed advice, but who could I turn to? Most of my friends were either gone or facing their own health challenges. Then I remembered my old teaching colleague and neighbor, Frank Thompson. Frank had taught history while I taught English, and after retirement, he had gone back to school and earned a law degree, practicing part-time for several years before fully retiring. If anyone would know what to do, it would be Frank. But before I called him, something nagged at the back of my mind. Something about the way Adam and Diana had acted. They seemed so confident, so sure that I would have no recourse, as if they believed the signatures would hold up to scrutiny. Then a thought struck me. I hurried to my small home office, ignoring the pain in my arm. In the bottom drawer of my desk was an old cassette recorder I had used for years to record my lessons and student presentations. It was a habit I had continued even in retirement, recording bird songs in the backyard or ideas for the memoir I sometimes thought about writing. With trembling fingers, I pulled out the recorder. Had I left it running this morning? I sometimes turned it on when I was expecting visitors, a habit born from years of wanting to remember conversations accurately when conferencing with parents or administrators. I pressed play, and after a moment of static, I heard voices. My voice, Adam's voice, Diana's voice. The entire conversation, from their arrival to the moment Adam threw the coffee, was captured on tape. A wave of emotions washed over me. Relief that I had evidence of what had truly transpired. Sorrow that such evidence was necessary against my own child. And finally, a steely resolve I hadn't felt in years. I reached for the phone and called Frank. "Jeremy, everything okay?" Frank's familiar gravelly voice answered after the second ring. "No, Frank, it's not," I admitted. "I need your help. Can you come over?" Something in my tone must have conveyed the urgency, because Frank didn't ask questions. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. True to his word, Frank arrived quickly. His tall frame stooped now with age, but his mind as sharp as ever. I showed him the burn on my arm first, then the paperwork, and finally played the recording for him. He listened intently, his bushy white eyebrows drawing closer together as the recording captured Adam's threats and the sound of the coffee being thrown. When it was finished, Frank removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Jeremy, this is serious. What they've done is illegal on multiple levels. Fraud, forgery, assault, threats. He's my son, Frank," I said, my voice breaking. "My only child." Frank placed his hand on my shoulder, his expression somber. "I understand, but think about what they were asking you to do. Sell your home, empty your savings. For what? So they could avoid the consequences of their actions and continue living beyond their means. What should I do?" I asked, genuinely lost. "Legally speaking, you need to report this to the police," Frank said firmly. "This recording and these documents are evidence of criminal activity. If you don't report it, you could be held liable for these debts." "But Adam could go to prison," I protested. "Yes, he could," Frank acknowledged. "And that's a terrible thing for any parent to face. But Jeremy, think about what happens if you don't report it. These investors they mentioned, the ones who don't resolve debts through the court system, do you think they care that you didn't actually take their money? Your name is on the paperwork. They'll come after you." The reality of the situation hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about money or a house. This could be about my safety. "There's something else to consider," Frank added gently. "If Adam and Diana have done this to you, they may have done it to others, or they will in the future. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is allow their child to face the consequences of their actions." I thought about Martha then, about what she would say. She had always been the disciplinarian in our family, the one who believed in firm boundaries and natural consequences. "Love doesn't mean letting someone harm themselves or others," she used to say. "How do I report this?" I asked finally, my decision made. Frank squeezed my shoulder. "We call the police. I'll stay with you through the whole process. With a heavy heart but newfound determination, I picked up the phone. It was time for the truth to come out, no matter how painful. The police arrived within 30 minutes of my call. Officer Thompson, a young man with kind eyes that reminded me of some of my former students, took initial notes while Sergeant Rodriguez, a no-nonsense woman with salt and pepper hair pulled back in a tight bun, asked the more pointed questions. "Mr. Wilson, can you show us the injury you mentioned?" Sergeant Rodriguez asked. I rolled up my sleeve to reveal the reddened skin where the coffee had scalded me. Officer Thompson photographed it from several angles. "And you say this was your son who did this?" Rodriguez continued, her expression carefully neutral. "Yes," I confirmed, the word painful to say aloud. "My son Adam and his wife Diana. And the reason for the altercation?" I showed them the envelope full of documents, explaining how Adam and Diana had created a company in my name without my knowledge or consent, forged my signature on multiple documents, and accumulated $500,000 in debt that they now expected me to pay by selling my home. Sergeant Rodriguez examined the papers carefully. "And you're certain you never signed these documents?" "Absolutely certain," I affirmed. "I never even knew this company existed until today." I then played the recording for them. Both officers listened intently, occasionally making notes. When the recording captured the sound of the coffee being thrown and my cry of pain, Officer Thompson's jaw tightened visibly. "Mr. Wilson, this is very useful evidence," Sergeant Rodriguez said when the recording ended. "Would you be willing to provide us with a copy?" Frank, who had remained silently supportive throughout, spoke up. "I can help with that. I have equipment at home that can make a digital copy." While Frank took the recorder to his house, the officers continued their questions. "Do you know anything about these investors they mentioned? The ones they described as dangerous?" Rodriguez asked. "No, nothing," I admitted. "Today was the first I heard of any of this." "And you have no idea how long this has been going on?" I shook my head. "The company paperwork is dated 18 months ago, but I had no knowledge of it until today." Officer Thompson looked up from his notes. "Sir, we'll need to investigate this Wilson Investment LLC. Do you have any objection to us accessing records related to this company since your name is technically on them?" "No objection at all," I said firmly. "I want to know exactly what they've done in my name." Frank returned with a USB drive containing the recording, which he handed to Sergeant Rodriguez. She thanked him and then turned back to me. "Mr. Wilson, given what we've heard and seen, we have enough to move forward with an investigation. What they've done constitutes identity theft, fraud, forgery, and assault. But I need to ask you directly, do you want to press charges against your son and daughter-in-law?" The question, though expected, still hit me hard. Did I want my only child to face criminal charges? The image of Adam as a small boy learning to ride a bike flashed through my mind, followed immediately by the memory of his face contorted with rage as he threw hot coffee at me. "Yes," I said finally. "I want to press charges." Rodriguez nodded, no judgment in her expression. "We'll need to take a formal statement from you, and we'll be investigating this company thoroughly. If there are other victims or crimes involved, those will be added to the case." "What should I do if they come back?" I asked, suddenly worried about Adam's parting threat. "We'll have patrols keep an eye on your house," Officer Thompson assured me. "And here's my card with my direct number. Call immediately if they return or contact you in any way." After taking my formal statement and collecting copies of all the documents, the officers prepared to leave. Sergeant Rodriguez paused at the door. "Mr. Wilson, I know this must be incredibly difficult. We see cases of elder financial abuse frequently, but it's rare for victims to come forward, especially when family is involved. You've done the right thing." After the police left, Frank insisted on staying with me. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of what had happened and what was to come hanging heavily between us. "Do you think they'll find them?" I finally asked. "The police?" "Yes, I do," Frank replied. "Adam and Diana don't strike me as sophisticated criminals. They've left a clear paper trail." 2 days later, Officer Thompson called with an update. The investigation into Wilson Investment LLC had uncovered a web of deception far larger than I had imagined. Mr. Wilson, we've discovered that your son and daughter-in-law have approached at least 6 other individuals with investment opportunities through this company. Most were elderly, and in several cases, they appear to have forged signatures on documents. Have they stolen money from these people too? I asked, sickened by the thought. In 3 cases, yes. The total amount is approaching $2 million. I sat down heavily, trying to process this information. And the $500,000 they wanted from me, according to our financial investigator, the actual debt to legitimate investors is closer to $150,000. The rest appears to have been misappropriated by your son and his wife. You mean stolen? I clarified. Yes, sir. That's exactly what I mean. The officer paused before continuing. There's something else you should know. We have reason to believe your son and his wife are planning to leave the country. They've purchased one-way tickets to a non-extradition country departing tomorrow morning. The knowledge that they had planned to flee after extracting money from me added another layer of betrayal. They never intended to face the consequences of their actions, never planned to repay the money. They would have left me destitute and disappeared. We'll be apprehending them prior to their departure, Officer Thompson assured me. Given the flight risk, the judge has already approved the arrest warrants. As I hung up the phone, a strange mixture of grief and relief washed over me. The son I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, but at least now the truth was out, and whatever happened next would be based on reality, not deception. The call came early the next morning. Adam and Diana had been arrested at the international terminal of the airport, attempting to board a flight to Belize with 8 suitcases between them and over $50,000 in cash. They've been booked on multiple charges, Sergeant Rodriguez informed me. Fraud, forgery, identity theft, elder abuse, assault, and attempting to flee prosecution. The district attorney is taking this case very seriously. 2 days later, I received another call asking if I would be willing to come to the station. Adam had been asking to speak with me. Against Frank's legal advice, I agreed. The police station was a modern building of glass and steel, nothing like the forbidding brick structures from television shows. Officer Thompson met me in the lobby and escorted me to an interview room where Adam waited, dressed in an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him. He looked smaller somehow, diminished without his expensive clothes and confident demeanor. When I entered, his eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed accusingly. You actually came. You asked to see me, I replied simply, taking the seat across from him. A uniformed officer stood silently by the door. I can't believe you did this to me, Adam said, his voice low and bitter. Your own son. I did this to you? The irony was almost too much to bear. You could have helped us, he continued. Instead, you called the police on your own flesh and blood. I studied him, this stranger wearing my son's face. Adam, you forged my signature. You created a fraudulent company in my name. You tried to steal my home and savings, and when I refused, you assaulted me and threatened me. It wasn't supposed to go that way, he muttered, looking down at his cuffed hands. You were supposed to help us. That's what family does. Is that what you were doing when you targeted other elderly people for your schemes? I asked. The police told me everything, Adam. This wasn't a one-time desperate act. This was a pattern. A flash of something crossed his face too quickly to interpret. Shame? Annoyance at being caught? It was impossible to tell. Did you record me? He asked suddenly. That day at the house? I nodded. Not intentionally. I had left my old recorder running. A habit from my teaching days. Always the careful teacher, he said with a bitter laugh. Well, your little recording has ruined our lives. Diana's parents have disowned her. My career is over. Are you happy now? Happy? I repeated incredulously. My only son is in jail facing felony charges. No, Adam, I'm not happy. I'm heartbroken. For the first time, Adam's facade cracked slightly. They're saying I could get 10 years. The police mentioned that was possible. Yes. 10 years, Dad, he repeated, a note of panic entering his voice. I'll be middle-aged when I get out. My life will be over. Your life won't be over, I said firmly. But it will be different. And that's the consequence of your choices. Can't you drop the charges? He pleaded. Tell them it was all a misunderstanding. I shook my head slowly. You know I can't do that. Not with the recording, not with all the evidence they've found, and not with the other victims involved. Adam's expression hardened again. So that's it? You're just going to let me rot in prison? I'm going to let justice take its course, I corrected him. But I've hired an attorney for you, a good one. He'll ensure you're treated fairly. This seemed to surprise him. You got me a lawyer? Why? Because despite everything, you're still my son. And while I can't protect you from the consequences of your actions, I can make sure you have proper representation. Before Adam could respond, the door opened and Diana was led in by a female officer. She looked even more diminished than Adam, her carefully maintained appearance now reduced to a plain jumpsuit and hair pulled back without styling. Her eyes darted between Adam and me. What's he doing here? She asked Adam, as if I couldn't hear her. My father has decided to throw us to the wolves, Adam replied bitterly. Diana turned to me, her expression suddenly pleading. Jeremy, you have to understand. We never meant for things to go this far. We were desperate. Desperate enough to create false documents in my name 18 months ago? I asked quietly. Desperate enough to target other elderly victims? Desperate enough to book one-way tickets to Belize? Her face flushed. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Diana? I asked. Help me understand how you and my son decided that defrauding me and others was an acceptable solution to whatever problems you had. Diana looked at Adam, who gave a small nod. She sat down heavily beside him. It started with gambling, she admitted. Adam had some losses. Significant losses. Adam's jaw tightened, but he didn't contradict her. We borrowed to cover them, but then there were more losses, Diana continued. And the interest rates from these lenders were impossible. Before we knew it, we were underwater with no way out. So you decided to drag others down with you, I concluded. We were going to pay everyone back, Adam insisted. The Arizona development was supposed to deliver huge returns, enough to clear all the debts and still leave profit. But it failed, I guessed. The environmental survey found endangered birds nesting on the property, Diana explained. The whole project fell apart, and our investors wanted their money back immediately. These investors, I said carefully, the ones you described as dangerous. Who are they? Adam and Diana exchanged another look. Some of them are just regular banks and credit unions, Adam admitted. But others are private lenders, people who don't care about credit scores but charge very high interest and have their own collection methods. Loan sharks, I translated. They were threatening us, Diana said, her voice breaking slightly. That's why we needed the money so quickly. That's why we came to you. And the one-way tickets to Belize? I asked. We were scared, Adam said simply. We knew we couldn't get the money in time. We just wanted to disappear until we could figure something out. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw for the first time the frightened boy beneath the man's face. He had made terrible choices, one after another, digging himself deeper with each decision, and now he was facing the avalanche of consequences. The district attorney has offered us a deal, Diana said suddenly. If we cooperate fully, identify all our victims, return what assets we have left, and plead guilty, they'll recommend reduced sentences. Are you going to take it? I asked. Do we have a choice? Adam replied. Defeated. There are always choices, I said, echoing what Martha and I had taught him since childhood. Sometimes none of them are good, but there are always choices. As our time came to an end, and the officers prepared to take them back to their cells, Adam looked at me directly for the first time. Will you come to the sentencing? He asked, his voice small. Yes, I promised. I'll be there. 3 months later, I sat in a courtroom as Adam and Diana entered their guilty pleas. The evidence against them had been overwhelming, and with the plea deal, Adam was sentenced to 4 years in prison while Diana received 3. They would also be required to make restitution to all their victims, though the judge acknowledged it might take decades to repay the full amount. I watched as they were led away in handcuffs, my heart heavy but my conscience clear. Sometimes, love means allowing those we care about to face the consequences of their actions, no matter how painful it is to watch. 18 months have passed since that day in the courtroom. The leaves are changing now, painting the neighborhood in shades of amber and crimson that Martha always loved. I still live in our home, though it feels different now. The memories are still here, but they share space with newer, more complicated emotions. The first few months after Adam went to prison were the hardest. I found myself jumping at unexpected sounds, checking and rechecking my financial statements, and feeling a profound sense of isolation. Who could I talk to about my only child being in prison for trying to defraud me? What kind of father raises a son capable of such betrayal? Frank and his wife Janet became my lifeline during those dark days. They would invite me over for dinner, never pressing for details but always willing to listen when I needed to talk. It was Janet who suggested I might benefit from joining a support group. For what? I asked, genuinely puzzled. Victims of financial fraud, for parents of incarcerated adults, she explained gently. You're not alone in this, Jeremy. There are others walking a similar path. I resisted at first, uncomfortable with the idea of sharing such personal pain with strangers, but eventually, loneliness and desperation drove me to attend a meeting at a community center downtown. That first night, sitting in a circle with 8 other parents whose adult children were in prison for various offenses, I felt a weight begin to lift. These people understood the unique anguish of loving someone who had done terrible things. They understood the complicated dance of supporting without enabling, of loving without excusing. George, a retired plumber whose daughter was serving time for drug-related charges, put it best: we can love our kids without loving what they did. And sometimes the most loving thing we can do is let them face the music. Through these meetings, I formed new friendships with people who never knew me as poor Jeremy whose son is in prison. They simply knew me as Jeremy, a fellow traveler on a difficult road. 6 months after Adam began his sentence, I received a letter from him. The handwriting was familiar but more careful than I remembered, as if each word had been considered before being committed to paper. Dear Dad, it began. I've started and torn up this letter a dozen times. What do you say to someone you've hurt so badly? I'm sorry seems inadequate, but I am sorry. More sorry than I can express. The letter went on to explain that Adam had joined a program in prison that combined addiction treatment for his gambling problem with counseling and vocational training. He was learning carpentry, a skill that reminded him of the birdhouses we used to build together when he was young. I don't expect forgiveness, he wrote near the end. I don't deserve it, but I want you to know I think about what I did to you every day, and I'm trying to become someone different, someone better. I read that letter many times before finally responding. My reply was cautious, but not cold. I told him about my support group, about the garden I had planted that spring, about the memoir I had finally started writing. I made no promises about our future relationship, but I left the door open for continued communication. Our correspondence became regular, if somewhat formal at first. Then, after a year, I decided it was time to visit him. The prison visiting room was bright and institutional, nothing like the dark, forbidding spaces depicted in movies. Adam looked different, thinner but somehow healthier. The entitled arrogance that had characterized him in recent years was gone, replaced by a watchful humility. You came, he said as we sat across from each other at a small table. I said I would, I reminded him. Our conversation that day was halting, sometimes awkward, but real in a way our interactions hadn't been for years. He asked about my health, about the house, about Frank and other neighbors he remembered. He didn't ask for money or favors, didn't make excuses for his actions. The counselor here says I should make amends, he told me toward the end of our visit. But he also says that sometimes the harm we've caused is too great for simple amends, and we have to accept that relationships may never be the same. That sounds like wise counsel, I agreed. I think about Mom a lot, Adam admitted, his eyes shining with unshed tears. About what she would think of all this, of me. Your mother always believed in redemption, I told him, in the possibility of change. Since that first visit, I've returned every month. Each time, our conversations grow a little easier, a little deeper. Adam has completed his GED and is working toward a vocational certificate in carpentry. He talks about finding honest work after his release, about making restitution to me and the other victims, about building a life defined by integrity rather than appearances. Diana filed for divorce 6 months into her sentence. Adam seemed more relieved than heartbroken by this development. We brought out the worst in each other, he explained, always pushing for more, for better, never satisfied with what we had. As for me, I've learned my own difficult lessons through this ordeal. I've had to examine the ways in which Martha and I may have contributed to Adam's sense of entitlement by always smoothing his path, by prioritizing his happiness over his character development. We gave him everything, but perhaps what he needed most was to learn how to earn things for himself, how to face disappointment, how to find contentment in enough rather than always craving more. I've also learned about resilience, about the human capacity to begin again after devastating loss. The betrayal by my son could have left me bitter and isolated in my final years. Instead, it has connected me to new friends, inspired me to finally write the memoir I've contemplated for decades, and even led me to volunteer with a financial literacy program for seniors to help others avoid similar exploitation. Adam will be eligible for release in another 8 months. What our relationship will look like then remains to be seen. I harbor no illusions that the road ahead will be easy. Trust, once shattered, does not simply reassemble itself without effort and time. But I've seen genuine change in my son, a humility and self-awareness that was absent before. Perhaps the most important lesson I've learned is that true love sometimes requires painful choices. The easy path would have been to give Adam and Diana what they wanted that day, to sell my home and empty my savings to protect my son from consequences. But that would not have been love, only fear and enablement. Real love, the kind Martha and I always tried to embody, means wanting what is truly best for someone, even when that includes accountability for wrong actions. Sometimes the heart must break before light can enter, and in that light, we find the path to genuine forgiveness. If this story resonates with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision regarding a loved one? What helped you find your way through? Your experiences might help others facing similar challenges. And if you found value in this story, please consider subscribing to hear more life lessons from my journey. Remember, even in our darkest moments, we are never truly alone. Thank you for listening, and may you find wisdom in your own challenging relationships.